One of the toughest challenges we all face in business is differentiating ourselves in the minds of our customers. How do we get our customers to think, I can't get it anywhere else? This is so difficult, but it's so important because a customer who thinks, I can't get it anywhere else, I want to be more involved with your business, is a customer that's not just going to stay with you, it's a customer that's going to give you more business. And it's going to always rave to her friends and colleagues about how wonderful you are. How often do we miss the chance for unbroken, continuous conversation with our customers? Think what it would feel like to your customer if he felt that when he reconnects with you, it's an unbroken, seamless conversation. You remember what was going on and you're able to pick up right where you left off. A customer relationship is an ongoing conversation in which your customer never thinks about you without thinking of both of you. When your customer stops thinking of you as him or her or them, but instead thinks of you both together as we, you have insulated yourself from the competition in a way that a product or a service never can.
Compare the clutter now to 5 years ago, or especially in Croatia 10 years ago. It's so much more cluttered. You can't just project your message and expect to connect with people. So how do we want to think about branding? How do we want to think about branding in a way that helps us use it to develop this connection between what people believe and the profits we make? Let's stop thinking about branding as the image we project to the world, and let's think of it this way. Your brand is what your customers believe about you. Your brand is what your customers believe about you. Now, another way to think about this, think about that. Your brand isn't what you say you are, it's what your customers believe about you. So if I want to know what the MPG brand is, sure, I can look at your beautiful quarterly newsletters. They're wonderful. Your brochures, I read them. I can look at your website. I couldn't read most of it, but some. But that doesn't tell me what your brand is. That tells me the message you're trying to get out to the world. If I want to know what the MPG brand is, I'd want to ask your clients, what do you think of MPG? I can't tell you how many times I've been giving a branding speech and the person who introduces me comes out wearing a cowboy hat. One company actually had a big cow on the stage. I'm like, no, the branding of cows, the branding of baby calves is the worst metaphor for branding. Will your clients let you hold them down and imprint the MPG logo on their brains? I don't think so, will they? Will the consumers let you hold them down and just tell them, brand them? You know, we grew up thinking branding is something we do to our customers, but in fact, it's the exact opposite. Let's turn it around 180 degrees. Guess what? You don't brand your customers, they brand you. You don't brand your customers, they brand you. This story takes place on the banks of the Seine River 800 years ago as the Notre Dame Cathedral was being built. How many of you have seen Notre Dame? It's pretty majestic, isn't it? Well, there was a reason they built a lot of these medieval cathedrals on riverbanks. You know why? Well, their trucking was not very good back in those days. So they had to bring the boulders over water. And if you went to the riverbanks by one of the construction sites for a medieval cathedral, you'd see the same scene. There'd be all these guys with huge boulders and chisels and hammers, and they're cutting these stones. Your job is to cut one for the floor, you cut one for the arch, and you're doing one for the ceiling, and everybody's there pounding away, cutting their stones. So imagine this scene. And this medieval Frenchman skips up. This is a guy who didn't have to do this. He must be a farmer or something. He walks up to the first guy, sees him cutting, and says, "Hey, pal, what are you doing?" The guy looks up and says, "You jerk, what do you think I'm doing? Look at me. I'm cutting a stone, aren't I?" Undeterred, our medieval Frenchman goes up to the next guy. "Hey, pal, what are you up to?" "You idiot, what do you think I'm doing? I'm cutting a stone." Still undeterred, our medieval Frenchman goes to a third guy who's got the same kind of boulder, the same chisel, same hammer, same arm movements. "Hey, what are you doing?" This guy says, "I'm building a cathedral."
Now think of the difference between somebody who says, my job is cutting a stone, versus somebody who says, my job is building a cathedral. It's entirely different. Let me tell you my observation, working with lots of companies. Most employees, yes, there are the strange ones, but most employees, virtually all, would rather understand their job as building a cathedral than cutting stones. However, when I ask people to describe their jobs, even beyond the first statement, but we get into a long conversation, they don't talk about the cathedral. They talk about the stones they cut. So if employees truly are interested in building a cathedral, but they talk about stone cutting, why do you think that happens? Anybody have a thought? It's because we don't usually talk to employees about the cathedral. Look at most training programs. They're about the stone cutting. They're about the tasks. What we need to do is elevate that conversation to be about who we intend to be. What's the big picture? What are we really trying to do here? When you invite your employees into that conversation, they will think of their jobs as cathedral building and not stone cutting. Now, let's bring the word brand into this conversation now. I often ask people, what do you mean by the word brand? What do you think it means? And the most common answer I hear is, it's the image we project to the world. I don't like that definition. You know why? Because there's a lot of projecting that isn't connecting with customers. You know, there's that old adage we've heard forever, the philosophical conundrum, when the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? We now know the answer. Think of all the trees that are cut down to print millions of ads that nobody ever hears. The answer is it doesn't make a sound. So frequently, when we think about sending our messages out, that's not the point. Does it connect with anybody? I'd much rather think of your brand not as the image you're projecting to the world, but what do your customers believe about you? Because that's a much better indicator of how those customers are going to get involved with your business and help you be more successful. What customers believe about you, that is their brand impression. That's what branding is all about, creating those deep, rich beliefs in customers' minds. Okay, so how do we create those beliefs? Let's say you figure out what you would like customers to believe about you. What creates those beliefs? One of the things I realized when I was a teenager learning to play an improvised solo, is I was learning what notes I play on my guitar. And then one day it struck me, you know what? It matters less what notes I play. What matters more is when I play them. This idea of the rhythm of a relationship is so critical. Think about the rhythm of your relationship. These elements are critical to creating that ongoing conversation. So recognize that what you do, maybe some of you are responsible for the entire customer experience, but if you're not, recognize that the customer doesn't care what you generated, what the operations team generated, what the advertising agency generated. Integrated marketing is something that customers do, and the ongoing conversation, your work has to resonate with the rest of that conversation. Imagine this isn't a painting where you see all the dots at once, but use another art metaphor. It's a novel where all the scenes come over time. A novel would be pretty hard to read if each scene was written by a different author, right? The advertising agency wrote one chapter, and then somebody else did another, and the product development team came up with another one. It all integrates together in brand harmony. Let's face it, we can't be in person with all of our customers all the time. It's just a fact, right? We have to use tools of marketing communications to talk to our customers. So how do we think about using them in a way that builds relationships and doesn't just revert to transactions? But what kind of opportunities for encounter did Lincoln have? He'd see these people once every 6 months, once every 18 months. And in between, he could maybe write a handwritten letter or a telegraph. And think how awkward that is. I thought, my God, if Lincoln had some of these electronic tools, if he could send text messages or write on your Facebook wall or send you an email, my God, he'd have been even better at relationships. The point is this. Do these other encounters, or sometimes they have to be transactional, but do these interactions that aren't in person, do they bridge those personal encounters the way Lincoln's letters bridged his personal encounters? It's an amazing lesson. In fact, the modern tools can help us bond with our customers better if we use technology to get closer to our customers and not to hide from them.